This is The Second Studio, hosted by the Architecture and Design Office fame. My name is David Lee, and with me is Marina Bordeaux-Renee. The two of us are architects, partners at the office, and of course, hosts of the show. And this week, it's the two of us in the studio. And as I said in a other recording, we recently visited New York City, and we did an after-hours casual chat about the trip and our various illnesses during the trip. And then this recording, we're going to talk about some of the architecture and the buildings we saw. And again, it had been some time since we had visited New York, so some of the buildings we had seen previously, but now coming back with a different set of eyes, and some of the buildings were new, and they were not completed when we were there. So, yeah.
As it happens when you go away for a few years.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
It's kind of weird to come back like, oh, wow, there's a big building here. What happened? And yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. Sponsors.
Available with Revit version 2023.1 onward, Autodesk Insight is a next-generation carbon analysis tool that can help you make the leap to low-carbon design. With only a few clicks, Insight lets you analyze, understand, and track the embodied and operational carbon impact of your design choices. You can then visualize opportunities for energy efficiency and carbon mitigation with its flexible dashboards, helping you make more sustainable and informed decisions. Check out the Insight link in our show notes to find out more. This episode of The Second Studio is brought to you by BQE Core, the all-in-one firm management software built for architects. Designed by architects for architects, Core helps you track time effortlessly, manage projects seamlessly, and get paid faster so you can focus on design, not spreadsheets. With powerful automation and real-time insights, it's everything you need to run a smarter, more profitable firm. See how BQE Core can transform your practice by clicking the link in our show notes.
This is The Second Studio with myself and Marina. Here we go. We arrive. Okay, we get
did, yeah. Wow.
into the belly of the beast, into FiDi, into the financial district. We stayed near the World Trade Center site. It's very, very different now because it was completed. It's completed now. And when we were living there, the World Trade Center site, the Oculus had been completed, One World Trade had been completed, and maybe half of another tower was completed. But a lot of the buildings weren't fully done. And most importantly, I feel the entire urban plaza, let's call it, right? The World Trade Center site, which has the two fountains, whatever, was still cordoned off with large sheets of blue painted plywood, fencing, and construction zone stuff. So we never, until this trip, really got to feel what that space was meant to be like from a master planning standpoint. The thing is, New York is such a dense environment from an urban standpoint. Like, there's a lot of buildings and they're closely packed together, especially in FiDi, that in any city like that, it becomes generally like very important to have relief. You have to have pockets of open space which is a physical relief in the space, but a relief almost like psychologically for the citizens to have a space to feel like they can breathe a little bit.
It was nice also because the buildings and the streetscape and all of that is new. Yeah. So it's just kind of like nice, new, clean. It kind of feels good. There is still some awkward moments I felt. Where the Oculus is, like when you're facing the Oculus and the big wing is projecting to the right, like you're kind of like looking west. The space between the short wing of the Oculus and the building that's next to it, I felt it's kind of an awkward urban space still. They put a bunch of bronze-esque sculptures of, animals and stuff, which, are kind of fun and cool, but in a way, I felt like they did not fit the space well at all. Like they were kind of like too big or too close to each other, or there was no space to kind of like look at them from afar or sit. Like it just still feels like kind of a makeshift public space there. And the one to the right, I think there is still what looks like a temporary building, with a bunch of street art on it to kind of make it look like something, but it's like this 1.5 story, 2-story beer garden thing. So I think this space is also going to get transformed while after this is figured out.
Yeah. So, I said we were going to talk about buildings, and now we're talking about open spaces, but like it's an odd thing because I feel like one of the most common pitfalls and shortcomings of architects is the negative space they create with their buildings and a lack of understanding or sensitivity to creating a space that is programmed, first of all, but then also feels right. like
Yeah.
you're alluding to, right? In some of the spaces, they're there. There's program, meaning there's benches and places to sit, or there's a beer
Yeah.
garden, but it doesn't feel like it was coherently thought about. And I think that's also then inherently one of the challenges when you have a big master plan and a bunch of different architects doing completely different types of buildings. So we have the Oculus, right? We have the Snøhetta Museum. We have the performing arts structure by Rex, and we have a bunch of towers. And it's just like a lot of, and then the fountains. And there's a lot of different types of things happening. And I've always felt like, you know, in this space and other areas like it, in other countries even, it's like it's hard to have the open space between those very different structures feel like it's intentional open space.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, okay, whose responsibility is it to build it and, you know, design it?
And it goes beyond the master planning I'm describing, in an ideal sense, goes beyond just simply, okay, this building goes here, it takes up this much square footage, we maintain X amount of distance between that structure and the next, and then, you know, all the stuff from a mathematical distance measuring standpoint works out. It goes beyond that, and that's where it feels awkward. I'd also say so talking about the spaces, it's like if so One World Trade I actually like as a tower, just purely as a sculpture. I think it's pretty
I have
good.
to say, I'd never really cared for it when we were living there, and now that we came back and I looked at it from different angles, I'm like, it's pretty elegant.
Yeah, it's not bad. The top seems a bit mechanical looking, but whatever. But what I was going to say is that at the bottom of One World Trade, first I'm very, very like interested in how towers meet the ground, as a study. But the space around the building is kind of like I don't know if you'd say it's unsuccessful, but it's kind of depressing. And maybe it naturally needs to be that way because it is a business building. It's not like it's not a place of commerce.
But you can't be making a statement like that in a city and then have such a underwhelming
space around it.
Podium.
No, I know. And so like right across from the front of One World Trade, if I recall correctly, faces that new Performing Arts Center by Rex. And so there's a space, obviously between the two buildings that's pretty wide. And, if, again, it's the tower is an office tower. The Performing Arts Center is a Performing Arts Center. So you do have a mixture of programs right there. But the space between them is like not very desirable, and there's some like aluminum, circular tables and chairs, like the flimsy kind you find everywhere, kind of sprinkled about on the side of the Performing Arts Center as if to say like, here, you could sit there.
Last minute sprinkle,
there's this weird kind of like grade difference between the two sites. And it's just odd, right? Because as architects, we always pride ourselves on creating beautiful buildings that contribute back to the city fabric. And that's what we're creating as a larger experience. And yet, the experience that the most people have, which is around the buildings, like, okay, so we have this like leftover space with some crappy aluminum chair seating. It just doesn't feel right. And even from a facade standpoint, when you're on that side of the Performing Arts Center, it's like, am I supposed to be here, or is this the entry for like security and for back of house? Which it probably was. I don't recall.
I don't think it was the main entrance, but still, the street, the alley between the two buildings is wide enough that you would expect something there.
Yeah, and again, I understand that One World Trade is an office building, so that automatically makes the ground level different than if it were filled with
It's fine,
commerce.
But it's also the office, the office building of like a lot of like major companies. So it's not like it's Bob's business that's in One World Trade, right? Like it's. I don't know, Condé Nast, I think, was there. Like, there's a lot of, like, major companies that have their office in that tower. So you would just expect it to be a bit more eventful.
You would think that in this 3-block radius, or however large the World Trade Center site is, that every single square foot of public space would be exquisite. Not just the towers and the buildings, right? The outdoor space would be.
I also wonder how much of what the spaces are meant to be was thought about as like, what happened in that place, several years ago, and maybe not making it feel like a Disneyland in some way, like too eventful.
I don't
by
think
respect
so.
to that, I'm not sure. The other thing that kind of like shocked me as we were down in that area at night is, you have the Oculus with this, glowing lantern in the streets. You have those towers with like little faceted, glass facade that are shining. The lobby is a One World Trade, like, lighted, lighting in the trees and stuff like that. And then on the other side of the street of the Oculus, there is that, I forgot the name of that church with the little cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
That is the darkest place in the whole FiDi. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I get it. It's a cemetery. You probably don't want to have like Christmas light in it and whatever. Like, fine. But
Can you
please,
imagine that?
like, you could at least put some landscape lighting, or like light up a tree, light up the cross on the church. Like, it was so bleak.
Yeah.
Like, you walk from like, all of those recently completed projects, and then you cross the street and you're walking along this black hole, and it was really weird. I was waiting for zombies to come out. I'm like, what's going on here? This is so strange.
Yeah, I had the same thought when we were walking by it. So I actually used to work for a short period of time in a building that was right across the street from that cemetery. And even then, and during the day, in contrast, it's still an odd
It's weird.
place. And to your point, like, it is a cemetery, it is historic, so what are you going to do about it? But it brings up the bigger question, I think, of what does it mean to preserve a historic site, and how do we do that appropriately and productively? Productive in the sense that when we preserve it, we're not just putting this thing in a glass box, but somehow its existence still contributes back to the urban fabric and the urban experience. And I don't think we have, in a lot of cases, we don't really answer those questions successfully. And that cemetery is an example, because if I were to visit FiDi as a tourist, and I didn't understand the historical significance of this cemetery and the church, and so therefore I'm just purely critiquing it as from a first-person experience standpoint, I would say, well, this is garbage. Take it out and put some shops there, put a market there, put something there, right? And which is kind of
Yeah,
sounds
I don't
horrible
know
to
what
say out
kind
loud.
of tourist you are.
Yeah, but I mean, even a tourist could tell like this is significant because there's plaques and whatever. But my point is that, like, does preserving an area or a building, is that enough? Is that enough to actually honor what it is and truly preserve it when it does have very clearly and objectively generally like a negative impact on like the experience of the
Well,
area?
I mean, I think I don't think it needs to be ripping out. Like, it's fine. Keep one of those really old sprinkles from 100 years ago as a testimonies of the time has passed and whatever meaning that has. But I have no problem in keeping old stuff next to new things. It's more like it felt to me like whoever's preserving this thing gave up on it.
Right.
It feels like it was not to be funny, but it feels like it's a dying lot in that area, which is appropriate because it's a cemetery, fine. But it's like nobody cares about it anymore. That's how it felt to me, which was weird. So anyway, that was just a small anecdote.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And at the same time, it's not like we need to, Disneyfy everything. It's not like every experience needs to be wonderful and magical or beautiful. And I'm not saying that either, but it's just, I don't know. It's like, it's just weird. It's like, is that enough just to put like a fence around it and be like, okay, yeah, well, we've solved the problem of preserving this and now we're done. And I don't think so.
No.
So talking about the buildings, finally, let's start with talking about the Oculus. So, I was trying to think of positive things to say about all the structures, as well as more like critiques. I struggle with the Oculus, however. So I think, first of all, the construction execution on the exterior is a lot worse than I wish it was. When you have a structure that costs like $1 billion or whatever, and it's unique, you expect there to be some challenges and maybe some rough spots. Like I could see where maybe the fins, at the very top wouldn't be like super clean, but the way the structure is designed, and we'll have images on YouTube, where you enter the portal, it's a very low entry, so you see a portion of the structure right above you, and it's dirty. I don't mean like it's dirty with dirt, but the construction execution is sloppy. It's super crumpled looking, uneven. It's bad. It's a bad job, and not bad from the relative to like high-end residential work. No, it's just bad. It's shoddy work. Even a low-end contractor doing cheap houses would be called out and say like, no, that surface looks horrible. And it's shocking to me because I'm talking about the entry to a $1 billion transit center in the middle of the World Trade Center site in New York, right? And yet they have a roof that's 10 feet tall above where people are. That's all gross. What is that about, man? Get out your sander, sand that thing down.
Well, whoever did CA on that construction site probably got fired.
Yeah, I know they probably ran out of money, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a few spots, but I was trying to be on vacation, so not inspecting buildings too closely.
Then I'll say also, I don't know how you felt, but the lighting of the building from the exterior, walking around it, very poor. They needed to have a better lighting designer, because you expect this winged, angelic white structure to glow, right? And it sort of does at the bottom. But there's a few like spotlights between the fins at the top that do nothing. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's missed the mark for David.
So what are your positive thoughts on the Oculus?
Well, my positive thought is that actually I don't think, again, I really cared when it was finished and we were living there. I was kind of like, oh, yeah. But we stayed there, so we would walk by it pretty much every day for a week and a half. And I was like, this is nice. It's different, it's special, it's white, it's not like one of those glass buildings again. Like it's a little moment, so that was cool. The entry that we took to get in and out of it, to access the subway, I thought felt like a cheap mall. So, to stay positive, I feel like that moment could have been done a little bit better.
That's your positive form of feedback. There was more potential that was untapped.
No, I mean I like the presence of the building in the neighborhood, and the experience of walking by it and whatever. But the close-up interaction, which goes back to the execution and the entry moment of the building from where we entered. I mean, once you're in, it's kind of nice. You feel like you're at the front of a ship. Like you're looking down, you're seeing both sides, you're seeing the atrium and the light, and it's a nice moment when you're there at the railing. But anything from the pavers to that moment is complete trash. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, come on, like the entrance, like how could you miss the entrance? My
feeling is that the problem with work that is mostly driven by an objective, distanced, mathematical engineering approach to create a sculpture. The problem with that kind of project and that approach is that they're generally very inflexible, right? And so they're not able to, the design of the thing, the form of the thing is not able to like fully and properly address the different moments and experiences and the complexity of outdoor spaces in particular and its relationship to outdoor space, because the thing is what it is, right? It's here's an egg.
Yeah,
the egg is the egg.
Yeah, but
right?
I also feel like if you can be that creative in the shape that you're creating, solving the entry moment should be easy.
Well,
because you've done the hardest part of the work.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
And maybe, maybe the entry just should not have been there. Maybe it should have been on the bigger side of the building. Maybe that would have made more sense. I don't know. It just feels like the design is a beautiful thing, and then you kind of have to make it function for what it's meant to be. And we need an entrance, we need an elevator, so let's just plug it in there.
Poke a hole in the butt.
Yeah.
No, but see, so I agree with you, but that's also what I'm saying. I think offices or people and projects that approach things mostly from that lens, a mathematical lens like I'm describing, they struggle with being able to understand how that thing is going to play nicely with other stuff around it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And actually take on the complexity of a building like this one, which is a very complex building.
No, it is. And if you are trying to reach a certain level of excellence in the architecture you're creating, like every single aspect of it has to match that standard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway.
I do agree, though, in the positive light, that, again, we stayed in Faidai, so this is the station we got off at was at the Oculus or nearby. So we saw it like twice or 3 times a day. And I did feel like elated and kind of nice to be in that space every time we were there, in part because of the Oculus. Now, the thing is, I think I felt that way because it's a relief to everything else, right? Because it is in big open space, because it does reach up and touch the sky, and because it's white, and because there's negative space between the fins. All positive things. However, I think to create that sensation, it could have been executed 1,000 different ways. So the positive feelings I have in the experience have not, in my view, to do with the vast majority of the design of the building itself, but a few of the characteristics that are primitive characteristics that could be done in many, many different ways. But to be honest, over the 10 days that I was there, I became, I disliked the Oculus more and more.
Oh.
It just felt, all the things that I've mentioned just became more obvious to me, and it just felt not great. Also, to be honest, it's kind of a weird thing that we have this massive open space, and we have a structure that clearly, in its first birth is symmetrical, and it's not. It's clipped on one side because it's close to a building, and complex site. There's probably many reasons as to why it was located where it is, but I don't care about that. I'm kind of like, well, we had all this open space. Why not just like shift it over by 15 feet and let it be symmetrical? I don't know.
It's symmetry. It looks kind of a check mark.
It's
I think the thing that bugs me maybe the most, in a way, I was thinking, well, it's kind of cool to walk through that space to get to your subway, right? Rather than like a crappy station. Like, it's more eventful, like it's nice and it's lit, it's spacious, you can shop on your way to work or whatever. Like, like it's a different experience to get to your transportation. What I didn't like is the fact that I'm basically walking through a mall to get to the subway. And I'm like, does the mall has to be the answer to every big piece of architecture? And if you look at the brands in the mall, it's like, Banana Republic and like all of like the basic bitch brands, that are out there. I'm like, could we have made a place of transit for New Yorkers, people who are from different backgrounds, different cities, different ethnicities, different professions, different, like everything. Like, there's such a cultural mix in New York City. And I'm like, and the biggest transit center hub that you're going to create is going to have just the most generic stores and luxury brands. I'm like, you could have thought about like, what does this hub wants to be as a hub, and actually make it activated, because every time we walk through it, it's dead. No, it's dead. And it's like, it's not really a place where you want to be unless you're going to your subway. It's not a place where you would want to like spend some time, which I understand, like it's a place of transit, fine, then maybe make it smaller, or maybe like bring a garden in the middle of it, so at least it has some purpose, like.
I think you're touching on a really important question, and a difficult one, of how do you program, how do you insert program into a place like this where, you can make money? And when you make something into a mall, it's just, even as a mall, it's not successful. It doesn't feel right. Like, so let's say we have a separate project in a different location, and it's a mall. That's all it is. It's a dedicated mall. It was designed and built from the ground up, right? Built from foundation all the way up, just as a mall. You can create a mall that is a tremendous experience, even if it's a fully indoor one. Like, you can create an experience that feels right, and then it's a desirable. Look, there's problems with malls in general, but it creates a desirable place for people to go to, right? But when you do that, and then you put it inside of a transit center, and the transit center also is this, very sculptural thing, which is its own thing, really. It has nothing to do with it being a transit center or a mall. So now you have like at least three different things being forced together. And I don't think any of them really are really having discourse with each other. It makes, and now that I said it out loud, it makes almost all three of them unsuccessful to a degree, right? Because they're not truly what they want to be.
I mean, the other big one would be to think about Grand Central. Grand Central is also a transit place. People go and catch the train, catch the subway, like different types of transportation, people coming in and out of the city, like major hub, right? It's not a mall. I mean, there is little shops here and there, but it's not.
Well, they have
it's,
a layer that has a food
but
market.
like I feel like the world maybe that the Oculus was more successful, let's say 8 years ago, 6 years ago, when there was a lot more crowd going through it. I think also the fact that it seems to me when we went that the city was a lot quieter, that places of transit maybe lose their essence if the people are not there, So how does the building, still somewhat function or is what it's meant to be if the people aren't there?
The last thing I'll say with the Oculus, then we should move on. This is going to be like a 5-hour recording.
Yeah. I know, it's been half an hour already.
Is that there is something weird about entering through that tiny entry, like you said.
It's like you enter through the butthole of the Oculus. It's like
it's maybe it's to do with the contrast and the discord between, that scale and the scale of the plaza. Maybe it's to do with the conceptual openness of the solution of the master plan, which is to have fountains, right? And to be able to move around the fountains and the trees and the sky. And that feels like very antithetical to being like, okay, everyone squish through these 2 revolving doors here. It just like, it doesn't feel right. And it also doesn't feel right, like from a design, concept standpoint. There's something very like overly controlling about that way of circulating that I don't vibe with it. Yeah. So that's the last thing I'll say about the Oculus.
All right, so that was hour 1 of the trip.
Yeah. But actually, real quick, we in a previous recording, we talked about some architecture we saw in Switzerland, and we visited a project that was done by Calatrava, which was a law school, I think. And he also had sort of an Oculus kind of glass ceiling oval shape to it. And actually, the form was of kind of a football, an ellipse football, whatever you call it, in plan, which is kind of similar to this one in New York. And some of the lack of the ability of the architecture to again, adapt to different programmatic needs, I think exists in both. Like it really feels to me like you're shoving program into a thing you've already designed. That's what it feels like to me. I mean, and both structures too. Tiny ass elevators.
Or actually, or it's just the ground floor. Like you figured out how to occupy the volume around that atrium void you created, and anything above that, but the ground plane doesn't seem resolved. Like the first floor does not seem resolved.
You mean the street level?
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, that's well said. Freedom Tower we talked about. I think there's another tower adjacent to the Oculus on the short side of the Oculus. I think that's a Foster Tower. I'm not going to spend much time talking about it. I thought it was a very handsome tower. They do great work for the most part. You see, this is the problem when you go on vacation. You don't actually take pictures of architecture. So I'm trying to recall.
I usually do, but this time I was like, meh.
So I guess the next series of things we saw was along the High Line. So for context, again, when we were there, High Line was well completed. A lot of the structures were done. The Neil Denari structure was done, like for sure, for many years. The Hadid building was done. The big hotel with sex people was done. The standard. But the northern end of the High Line,
toward
Hudson Yards, was under construction. And so that's where we had left off, and now of course I think it's all completed, or at least
they still have the yards to cover, I think.
Okay, no, that's correct. But I should say that the large KPF tower or towers that has the what is it called? The shard, not the shard, the triangle observatory deck thing. That's now completed.
The what is it called? The edge.
The edge that was done. The shed is completed. The wastebasket, what is it called?
The vessel.
The vessel was completed. So all that stuff now was completed.
Wastebasket. You could have said just basket, but you chose to say wastebasket. So let's get to that.
So that's the context. Do I want to talk about Pier 57?
There's not much to talk about Pier 57. I mean, to me, it was more like another Chelsea Market on like a different location, which they're pretty close to each other. So it's kind of like, maybe you could have come up with another concept. But, it's always fun, like indoor food markets, like big building that's reused and adapted to be something else. Like, fine, that's cool. Nothing groundbreaking there, a little bit.
Yeah, I'd rather I'll leave my remarks for when we talk about the Spanish. What is it? The Spanish?
Underground market at the edge. Yeah.
Anyway, so High Line. get back on the High Line. We actually across 2 different days because the first day was way too cold, so we decided to come back on a different day. The first day, we visit after going to Pier 57 and having expensive lunch. And so actually, during lunch at Pier 57, we could look out the windows and look at the East River. Right, no. West Hudson River. And we had a view of the Little Island, which is the name of the park that sits on the Hudson that was designed by Thomas Heatherwick. You'll see pictures. It's the one with all the columns and the mushroom things. So we got a view. We got an experience of that from a distance when we're having lunch. And then afterwards, we walked over to the park for the first time, walking into the park, walked through it, and then left.
You get there, land into this very sad little playground plaza surrounded by green hills. I'm like, okay, so, I'm kind of like in the valley of the park, it looks like, with, a little flat spot with a little ice cream booth, a couple spinning chairs, a few umbrellas that someone decided to go buy, probably brought the same day because it seemed like out of place. And
but everything you're describing sounds great.
No, but it looked like shit.
Why?
Because it just felt like it wasn't part of the park. It was just like, it's just kind of like you have the checklist. Okay, what does the park need? You need some spinning chairs, ice cream booth, some lights, maybe a couple tables for people to sit because they get tired, and that's that. So, the actual sitting space or gathering space of the park where people would be and maybe spend time did not feel like it was thought about at all. And then you're like, okay, well, let's just meander in the park. So let's not, judge the painting before seeing it up close, right? Let's just meander through the park. So you meander through the park, and you kind of have 2 paths, let's say. One which involves steps and more or less stairs or sprinkled steps around,
Sure.
The landscaping. Fine. Other route, not the steps, because we had a stroller. We took the winding path to go to the top, okay? Not ADA compliant. Anybody who's in a wheelchair trying to stroll up that hill is a triathlon athlete, because there's no way that slope is
It's
ADA compliant.
Yeah.
So, I guess that park is not for these people, that's for sure. And there is only one meandering path to get up to the top. So you're like, okay, well, the journey must be worth the experience, if that's the way to be. You go up and up and up and up and up and, busy again, busy as like the High Line would be on a sunny day. Like you're walking behind people to get up to the top. And we're all wondering what is at the top. And you get to the top to a very small viewing, not a deck, but kind of like viewing point to absolutely nothing worth the view. Which I'm kind of like, you know what? Maybe that little ice cream kiosk that's downstairs, maybe just put it up there. So at least when you get to the top, I can get ice cream and be like, it was worth the trip, you know? It was just, I don't know, it was extremely disappointing. Like, you see it in magazines and published and big hype, this new thing, the floating park in New York City, this and that. And again, you have to remember that this park is just a few blocks away from the High Line. And to me, that was the most annoying thing about this place, was like, how could you create something like this that fails in so many ways next to the High Line, which overachieved anything it was trying for, right? It's like, hello, like, have you done your case study? Have you done your research before you design this thing? Like, not honestly, if you go to New York, don't even bother. Don't even go. So
wow.
That was my,
okay.
That was my opinion.
Okay. That's quite the commentary.
And the pod, let me get to the pod. So you
With
see
the
this, the mushroom lily pad, concrete structure, super interesting, right? Oh my God, it must have been complicated to design, to build, like precast foundation, like this whole mapping thing that was designed, kind of an interesting and formal idea from afar. But then when you get in the park, you just realize that, it's kind of like if you create a terrain in 3D in your computer, like how do you build it? Is it mesh? Is it point? Like how do you, like create the map? there's nothing indicative of those lily pad floating mushroom thing once you're in the park. Which to me, I was kind of like, okay, well, if you wanted a hillside park, then you could have just built it in so many ways. It didn't need to be that fancy and complex on the outside if you're not going to even see or feel any of it once you're inside of it. Like, I imagine seeing that from, the other side of the river, that, oh, I'm going to go in this park and maybe I could be in my own pod, in a floating pod up on the water, looking at the skyline, and kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a completely different concept, but give a sense of small, being able to appropriate a small portion of a public park for yourself for like 50 minutes, half an hour or something, And it was none of that. There's none of that. I'm like, this is just a standard park with like some pods underneath it. Like there's nothing new here.
One of the things that you learn as an architecture student in architecture school very quickly is that when you propose a design that has a unique, special, and oftentimes therefore more expensive in terms of financial cost or like construction labor or just like the part that is that, then and it's not properly utilized in the project, and it's not showed off enough. It's you're not gaining enough from all that effort, right? That's one of the first critiques you get as a student. Is a critic will be like, you are putting a lot of your own effort, everyone's money into this thing. Where's the reward for that? It looks like there were some ramps and some areas you could occupy underneath the structure amongst the forest of columns, but I think that was strictly for mechanical maintenance and utilities and whatnot. So I also say, to be fair, I believe at the entry of the park, I think there's two ways to enter, but one of the entries of the park, the area that we exited out from, the columns do extend high, so you actually walk underneath them to get into the park.
That's the best part of the park.
But that happens for a fleeting moment. My biggest problem with it, one of my biggest problems, is exactly what you said, though. Like, why don't we experience these really cool hexagonal or whatever shaped mushroom lily pads in the park? The narrative you just came up with what did you say? Like kind of having your own little safe space of park in New York City. That's a phenomenal concept, right? And it maybe would have cost more money, but like you could do that.
I mean,
but no.
They have an amphitheater too, which I forgot to mention. What a missed opportunity. What a clunky little thing that they had to shove on one side of the park. That was, honestly, it was sad looking. It just looked like an afterthought. I can imagine you're watching, I don't know, a concert, like a pianist performance with, like the sun setting in the background over the Hudson River, and you're in your floating pod with a group of friends, like listening to a concert in a
like
park.
Little balconies, right?
Watching a movie, like doing a movie night in that park could have been so poetic. And it was just so sad looking. It was just, that day, I have to say, I was extremely pissed. Like the architect in me was extremely pissed because Pier 57, was fun, but I was kind of like, I've seen that with Chelsea Market, and Chelsea Market was
superior,
way more successful than that. Yeah. And then this happened, and I was like, and what bugged me the most, again, is the proximity of these two buildings next to the Highline and the Chelsea Market. And I got annoyed at New York City that day. I was like, what are you doing, New York City? Like, do you even question the meaning of what you are building? Those infrastructure cost so much money, are supposed to be so iconic. And I'm like, they're like tourist trap, but in a way like hanging tape from the ceiling is a trap for flies. It's just it's just, what are you doing? I don't know.
I also agree with what you said, that the park, it is a little park, and so you can only expect so much of it. And it did have a bunch of good program, right? It's a checklist. Like it had the ice cream stand or whatever stand. It had umbrellas, seating, a nice grassy hillside to lay on, an amphitheater. It had all this stuff. But the way all those things were curated did not feel curated. It felt just thrown together. And the design of those things, when there was design involved, meaning to say like the amphitheater requires designing, right? Versus when you buy chairs, the chairs are the chairs. But the areas where they were designed were mediocre at best. They felt like a C grade level of design and execution, which is definitely does not fit on something that costs this much money and is like a tourist. It's a gem. It's meant to be a gem.
Yeah.
It's like, why is there this janky ass amphitheater stuck on top of this structure? And I have to say also that I like parks that are very formal and structured. I also really like parks that are informal and stuff just kind of is more of a chaotic mix of things. And having said that, this one was just it was bad. The planning of the surface level of the park was bad. It did feel cohesive. It felt like it was trying to be more chaotic or dynamic, I should say, but unsuccessfully. It just it was a massive disappointment. And you are right. It's a very weird thing to build up a park to have a very, very steep incline, which takes quite a bit of effort to get up to. We're not athletes, but we're also not like terribly, terribly, terribly out of shape. It takes an effort to get up there, and you get up there and there's zero payoff.
I know.
Now, again, I talk plenty about, kind of anti-consumerist ways of solving or approaches to cities and things. So you don't always need a payoff, right? You don't always need to put a big rotating restaurant at the top of a tower. However, it's just like general principle good design. When you get to the top of something, something's supposed to be there instead of a really small, underwhelming, nothing special place that has a view that's no different than the view you've had the entire way up. So it's like, but these are fundamental principles of designing, spaces. And the biggest tragedy for me, which you've said, is the amount of money it costs to build this thing. You've put all the money into the part that no one experiences. Like, there's very little to say that's positive about this, other than the fact that it is a what's the word? It's an anomaly. It's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a counterpart. It's different, right? But it being different does not equal being good.
But to me, it's not even different enough.
Well,
like
actually,
it's only different if you're looking at it from afar. But once you're inside of the park, it's not different than any other park out there.
In contrast, there is a park, and I've talked about it before, and because I studied it when I was in school. There's a park built up in Washington Heights, I think, that's also on the Hudson, and it was built on top of a waste management treatment facility. So politically, there's a lot of history with that. And obviously, it's a different scale of park, so it's hard to compare these two things. But in contrast, you have that park, highly successful, massive, connections to the city through these big pedestrian walkways that span over the freeway or the highway or whatever it is. Got a bunch of program. It's flat. It's not a spectacle like this one, right? It's not a star-studded architect designer thing, but it works super well. Yeah. And I bet I bet the park component of that thing, not the wastewater treatment facility or anything, I bet the park component probably costs about the same amount of money as this dinky ass thing where they spent tens of millions of dollars on the structure underneath it. And part of me is like, okay, well, what are we doing exactly here, right?
Yeah, and to me, a good park is a park that's thoughtful for whoever is going to come and occupy it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like this park was thoughtful at all.
Not thoughtful.
And I don't know if it's because, it was mostly designed by, I guess Heatherwick is an architect.
I don't know what he is.
Or what, but I don't know. Even the landscaping was nice, but it felt very formal and didn't seem to match the aesthetic or the bold identity again of the park from afar. Like, it seemed like just things were kind of clashing together to make a park, but none of them were meant to be together. So I don't know, very disappointing. I'm glad it was free.
I've said it before, and I will say it again, and this has been also agreed upon by other architects, notable ones off the record and off air, that I don't give a shit. His work feels like that of a second-year student in undergrad. And if a second-year student presented this stuff, all the stuff we said is the stuff that any decent teacher or critic would say, and then they would evolve the design. So underwhelmed with this. And our underwhelmment is also communicated by the fact that there's almost no photographs we took of the park.
I know.
And now a little break for our show sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Chaos. They make award-winning design and visualization tools, and they're really pushing the boundaries with AI. Now, AI is shaking up the architecture and design world, and Chaos is taking a responsible approach. Their tools are built to help architects, designers, and visualization specialists to work faster and explore more ideas without replacing creativity. Basically, Chaos wants AI to make your imagination stronger, not take over. So you get to design with more freedom, create stunning visuals, and stay in control of your work. If you want to see what that looks like, tap the Chaos link in our show notes.
Dear architects, design leaders, and founders redefining the industry, if you want to shape not only buildings, but the business behind them, this is your moment. Future London Academy's Executive MBA takes you inside the boardrooms of Pentagram, Uber, Zaha Hadid Architects, and Google, where you'll master finance, strategy, and operations from the people who already excel at them. Study along peers transforming the industry worldwide and do it all in just 9 intensive weeks over 1 year between London and California. The program is award-winning, transformative, and crafted for design and architecture leaders with 15 or more years of experience. If you're ready to grow your impact, apply now by tapping the Future London Academy link in our show notes. Say goodbye to design-unfriendly spreadsheets. Programma, built by designers for designers, provides an integrated suite of tools for every phase of your project. From mood boards to advanced specification tools to project management. Seamlessly integrated, easily shareable, and always current, Programma reduces redundancy and minimizes costly errors. Share your work in the format that works for you, be it PDF spec sheets or online branded client dashboards with always up-to-date specification details. Join Interior Design movers and shakers and start for free by clicking the Programma link in our show notes. Experience the difference with Programma, software built for interior design workflows. Anyway, let's move on. So, briefly, we visited a friend who designed a tower in Brooklyn. He lives in the tower. And I'll just say that was like a real treat. The tower itself is very handsome. The insides are nice too. But that was a lot of joy to visit someone who designed a structure that they're living in. You know, it's a full tower too. Okay, Highline Day 2. What do you want to start with?
I don't know, the Edge?
Yeah, sure. So the Edge is I think it's the name of a viewing platform that's at the top of a viewing sky deck. I think they call it outdoor sky deck. That's at the top of a tower. That was designed by KPF, and I think it's just the platform that's called the Edge, not the full tower.
Yeah.
Anyway, we paid some money to go up there because, you know, why not, to get a good view of the city. I don't have much to say about it except, you know, I think it's a handsome tower for what it is. The viewing platform was really, really cool. I always enjoy going up there. I'm willing to partake in the Disneyfication of things, to spend $30 to go up to get that kind of view. I like it. They had a glass floor, which was cool. I wish it wasn't fritted. I'm sure they had reasons for it, but it should have been just straight transparent. That would have been more disorienting than it having a pattern. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have more to say with all of that?
Going back to like the mall thing,
Okay.
like again, they had to stick in a mall in the podium of that tower.
Yeah, you got to pay for, you know,
And I'm
whatever.
like, okay, fine. And then, you know, it was a big mall. It wasn't that great. The orientation sucked. Like
I don't even remember the mall.
like it was hard to like find your ways around it. And then, well, you know, and then small details like the bathrooms were gross, but they had luxury brands. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
okay, yeah, no, I do remember now. There's a lot of stuff that wasn't working that felt
It was
like,
clunky.
for the
and
amount
I
of
don't
money and
know.
the scale of the mall, there was like oddly small things, like only small number of bathrooms.
Yeah. Anyway, that's not interesting information, but you know, just that. But the cool thing, I think my favorite part was that 5-second elevator ride that takes
course.
you from like, I don't know,
0
maybe
to
we
800
were
feet.
well, we were not at 0. We were on like the mall level, so maybe like 5-story up or something.
Okay, nominal.
From 5 to like 100 in like 5 seconds, and it's like, oh my god, is that what it feels like to go to the moon? You know.
I don't think so.
Like,
I don't think so.
I'm joking. But that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. Although they always put like videos, you know, on the screen in the elevator, and as a person who gets motion sickness, that's not great. But I very much enjoy the ride in that elevator.
The thing I want to talk about, not with the mall, but underneath it, there's the Spanish Mercado. I forget the name.
Spanish Mercado.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that.
That's underneath it, right? So what that is a basement level. So there's no windows. It's a subterranean.
Actually, there is doors that open onto the High Line or under the High Line or something.
You might be right.
Yeah.
Okay, but still,
we didn't exist to that,
it's mostly subterranean, the experience, right?
Yeah.
It's an indoor market that has, like the Chelsea market, like Pier 57, has a sprinkling of 50 or 30, whatever number of different little food vendors that are permanent. So you have, the food was phenomenal. Like you have paella, you have all the stuff that's like from Spain there. Really cool in terms of a food experience. The downside with these markets is that they're always like crazy expensive for the food. It's like $25 for like a small burger. I might be exaggerating. Maybe it was $20. It was like $6 for soda, then $8 for fries, that kind of deal. And what I want to say is that I understand that there's times a need for an indoor experience of what would typically be an outdoor kind of space.
Mm-hmm.
But I also sometimes feel like in those areas they're too manufactured. Like, and the same feeling you have in those spaces is the one that I felt when we were like in the Oculus and the mall in the Oculus, right? It feels like it's not even curated. It's too controlled. It's like it's a fake. It's a Disneyland version. It just doesn't feel.
I think you're right, and it's. What I'm thinking about those indoor markets, there is again like the Chelsea market, which is more of a warehouse market feeling. Like it's kind of like grungy, fabricated, but still kind of grungy because the identity of the building.
Yeah, there's an authenticity.
And then there is Italy, which is very much, the indoor market, kind of like framed to Italian culture and food, right? But Italy manages to do it in a way that feels authentic and tasteful.
My opinion is that it feels better because it's not trying too hard to be what it's not. Yeah. It's still one establishment, Italy, and that's it. And they have a few different food stalls and stuff, and you can buy all your Italian, foods and groceries there. And so there's enough variety, but it's also, they're not trying to like make believe market too much, right? It's still Italy. Everything's Italy branded, and that's what it is. And I just feel like a lot of these indoor markets like the Chelsea and the Chelsea one actually is quite successful, but like Pier 57 or the Spanish one, they're just.
It's like a playground, like a food playground.
There is that line of authenticity, and you need to somehow make the project, let's call it the project, feel honest. And I feel like a lot of those markets just don't feel honest because they haven't really thought about the sensitivities of the experience of creating a fake market, essentially, right? Like they're trying to create the weekend market that's a pop-up that happens in an open plaza in a historic European or whatever places. They're trying to recreate that, but so I don't know. I have mixed feelings about those places. But
the interesting thing is that I don't know why it always has to be indoors, and I feel like an indoor market, like it could be successful once in the city, or that's it.
Yeah.
But why don't you actually make it a real outdoors market? Like
money.
Well, because it's not privatized, it's not part of that building, like they don't get as much money and this and that. But I don't know, maybe somewhat figure it out. Like there is something about farmers market. You go to any country in Europe, any farmers market is magical. It's simple, but it's magical. It's authentic. It's only happens twice a week at this time. And if you miss it, you miss it. It's just a bit more charming. And I feel like, I don't know, somebody out here needs to like reinvent the farmers market in the US because they all suck, the ones that exist. And the indoor market feel way too fabricated that you go once or twice and then you kind of get the drill and exactly what you're going to find and there's no surprise, right?
It's also tough, I find, for the average person to want to go back because, again, things are so expensive. It's like, I'm going to go and not. At some point, you don't care about the experience because the experience is lackluster, like we're describing. So now you're just going for the food, but the food costs 20% more. So, like, why am I going to go?
You're going just to pay for that sky deck,
Yeah, no, I mean, it all goes to pay for whatever. But there was something you said that I want to reply to that I forget. But yeah, I think the comparison to like.
I mean, you could even use the High Line to have your farmers market. It is a pedestrian. No, but there is pockets and places like you could. I don't know. Like, it's just such a missed opportunity. Maybe it's not all year round. Maybe it's just during the summer. But like, come on, like someone needs to like bring authenticity to places, like stop, replicate the recipe in every single building out there.
I know what I was going to say. This also touches on, I think very directly, the subject of private and public space, and privately owned, quote, public space, or privately owned space that's supposed to feel public and all this stuff. And, as we had Thomas Wolfs, I forget his last name now, landscape architect on recently, he spoke about the negatives of privately owned public space. And we have done that as well, years ago on the show. And that's actually a big part of it, right? When you have a privately owned area that's meant to feel public, whether it is or isn't public, it never feels correct because they're trying to make it too in the brand that they're creating, too clean, right?
Yeah.
It's like gentrified, cleansed space, and therefore it doesn't feel real and open, to different things and different types of people. So, moving on. First thing we should talk about, I guess we can talk real quickly about the shed. I actually don't have anything to say about it. It's exactly what I thought it was going to be.
I actually thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah,
I do wish that we had seen it in action, like move, like see the whole facade move and see the building open. Like that would have been really cool. But just that big wheel, I thought it was really funny. Like I was like, we need more. I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool. It was like a different kind of building that's not so serious, especially across from the tower that was right there. I was like, this is a nice counterpoint. Yeah. And
what I was impressed by is, look, this is the type of thing that like you design in school.
Yeah.
And then you have a bunch of asshole critics who are like, well, we have a big wheel of that size. You have to be fabricated, and it's not going to work because of oil and the viscosity of the oil. Shut up, okay?
Dream a little.
We'll find the oil that we need to, this is the type of thing that's like, dreams of architects.
I know.
The fact that DSR did it is like so impressive. And this is art, architecture, and engineering truly all coming together, and it's remarkable.
And the client too, because the client who went for that idea, like kudos to them,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about the slope of that driveway. It's the slope of the drive was the maximum of 1.5.
It's like, God damn, dude. Like, could you be more of a buzzkill? Like,
I know.
I'm a second year student. I'm trying to, dream here.
I know.
But yeah, so I think it was great because of that. Okay, so we need to talk about what is it called?
The elephant in the room.
The vessel. Prior to visiting this, I was very amped to see the vessel. I was also amped to see Little Park. I was amped to see all this stuff because it's been a long time coming. We have a lot of friends still in New York, and a lot of them were like, hey, you should go to Hudson Yards. It's actually like really cool. The vessel is actually pretty interesting in real life, blah, 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 blah. So I had optimistic hopes, not high hopes. It wasn't like I was going to visit Ron Champa. I had, optimistic hopes, and I was excited to see it, having been, lived in New York for so long. I don't know, man. I don't know where to start with this. I was disappointed. Do you want to start for me? I'm just struggling.
Well, so we actually saw the vessel from the mezzanine inside the tower that's across from it.
Yeah.
That was the first view we got was from there. And we were not on the ground floor from it. We were like, a couple stories raised up looking at it. Mm-hmm. And it looked a lot smaller, I felt, than in person from a distance than photos that we had seen online.
Oh, interesting.
So I was kind of like, oh, this looks like much smaller than I thought it would be. I thought it would be this gigantic thing, which I guess I should have known better because
the scale does get distorted.
So that was interesting. That was kind of a surprise. And then we walked and approached it, and the materials it is very nice. Like you see this shiny object, and it's interesting because I feel like depending on where you look at it from, it could either look like a woven basket, it could look like a pine cone. It could kind of like and the color, the reflection. So the material, I don't know if it's copper, or some sort of anodized metal or of any sorts, but the color and the reflectivity was a very nice kind of hypnotizing thing. Like you kind of just wanted to keep looking at it,
The execution from the exterior is phenomenal from a construction standpoint, and polished copper. I mean, come on, like who doesn't want some cool polished copper? The structure was actually bigger than I thought in real life than what I
really?
remember in photographs. Yeah, which is an odd thing, and it does distort scale, and not a good way or a bad way, but it just does tend to distort scale. So. The way the vessel works, and there's a difference also between how it functions in real life from a ticketing standpoint and security standpoint versus how it was probably conceived. And to a certain degree, you can't really blame the designer / architect too much to how regarding how things end up being used, because when it comes to things like security, ticketing, whatever, a lot of that stuff I feel like happens. It's outside of the architect's control, or it happens later on in the project where they're like, wait, this was not my intention for it to be, this way, but now it is. So that experience, you have to pay for a ticket. You reserve it online, whatever. It's cheap. It's like $5 or $8 a person, whatever. And the whole thing is tightly controlled from a security standpoint. I don't know if when it first opened, it was just open and now it's become controlled since the suicides, but it is a controlled thing. But the design of it is not that way. So when the vessel meets the ground, it hits at 4 or 5 different points in a circular kind of fashion. So that means you have entry and exit points like 5 times, 6 times, whatever times around it. It's an open, porous structure. They have, let's say, retroactively put in, the security black, tape things all around. There's at the ground level, 8 different security guard ticketing, 9 different people working there, in black jackets, and you have to present a ticket. So that does shape the experience of the whole thing.
It's not just you're on the plaza, you happen to want to walk up of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is, I think, antithetical to probably what the vision was, which is unfortunate. You get inside, and as everyone knows, it's a series of stairs that you can go around and around. And I think you can go back and forth in different directions, but it's a kind of a circular shaped kind of cone thing. There's also an elevator, which I didn't know, which was great because again we needed to use an elevator. So again, not necessarily a critique of the architecture or of the studio who did the work, but of how the things function. So that elevator only makes a round trip from first floor up to the top level once every 15 minutes, which, given the size of the structure, is a really, really long time. It's a really long time to stand around for 15 minutes just doing nothing in here. The elevator's there as a priority for handicapped folks, elderly, things like that. That's fine. But still, there's an elevator operator guy sitting in a chair in the elevator.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there too. So there's a moment where we're standing at the ground level, and there's a queue of people behind us, and we're first in line for the elevator. We're all standing there. The elevator's at the ground level. The doors to the elevator are open, and the guy is sitting there on his phone on his chair for 12 minutes waiting with us. And he's like, no, you can't come in yet. And so during the trip back down, I talked to the guy. I was like, hey, what's the deal with this 15-minute thing? And I first thought he was going to be a dick because he did not look like he wanted to be there. He was actually very nice. He's like, well, the owner of the vessel, who are the powers that be, want to encourage people to walk the stairs, walk the vessel, not take the elevator. So they are limiting the elevator usage to only 15 minutes per round trip. I said, so this has nothing to do with a mechanical system overloading, which I don't know how that would happen. Nothing to do with the cost of electricity. It's purely because someone is controlling how people view and visit the vessel.
Because it was intended to be experienced as a walk-up.
As a walking experience.
Or whatever.
So he's like, yes, that is why this is being done. I said, that's interesting. He furthermore said, and this is to highlight the reality of architecture and the maintenance and the programming of architecture with staff and the staffing of it. He also said that, New York gets really hot during the summers and very humid. And you have people now patrolling it, like security guards working there, who are dressed in all black. And at the top, there's no shade. It's not like a shaded structure.
There is one security person standing by the door of the elevator on the top floor in the sun.
Baking in the sun. They're not allowed to have a chair. They're not allowed to have any kind of medical small HVAC unit or whatever. So when he goes to the top, he opens the doors and lets the security guard sit in the elevator with him for like 15 seconds and makes all the guests wait just for like 15 seconds. So that individual can get like 15 seconds of cold air every 15 minutes, or they don't fry to death. They're not allowed to have, I don't think they're allowed to have water either, I think he said.
No, it's like inhuman working conditions.
You know, and so the ground level's hot enough. They have shade from the structure, but the person at the top, they're stuck up there. And so anyway, I don't know.
So the intention was for the building to be walked, to be experienced. The problem is that if you were to walk up the building, he said it was like 16 stories.
Yeah.
Which, you know, New Yorkers, let's say, live in walk-up apartments. Maybe they go up 3, 4, 5 stories.
Yeah, sure.
Nobody ever walks up 16 stories. So again, there is a disconnect between the concept and how that designer designed this building, thinking it would be used, versus the actual reality of people doing it or not. And I think that makes up for a building to be successful or not be successful.
I don't understand who thought that 16 stories was going to be a good height for people to traverse. I mean, look, if you were visiting, like we have done, I'm trying to think. I don't know, like the red gates in Japan, or the Great Wall in China, or I don't know. Those are extreme examples, or like Arizona, the Grand Canyon, or like whatever places. Yes, during those trips as a tourist, you're doing a lot of walking. You're traversing a lot of elevation. True. However, if you track from a experiential, lens, what it means to walk across, go on a hike. Just forget those landmarks. A hike. Just a normal hike in a nice park. Yes, you're traversing 16 stories probably, but there's a continual, experience that happens. It evolves, it changes, it's beautiful, there's light that comes, it's different. Who's going to walk up 16 stories worth of the same experience in the same set of stairs 32 times or whatever the math is and how it breaks down? So I think actually that the vessel is too big. One could argue, it should be this scale because that's relative to the scale of the plaza and the buildings next to it. No, I don't really buy that.
The thing is, again, there is no promised thing at the top that makes it worth the
Like, is this some kind of joke
experience.
that's being played on everybody?
Like you could see the same view pretty much from, half the height up than if you were to the very top.
I read a plaque about the vessel that was somewhere either inside the mall or outside the vessel. I don't know, somewhere. It said, experience the vessel, unique, different perspectives of the city. Nah,
No.
not really. Not at all. What are you going on about?
No.
Like being inside the mall, taking the elevator to the mezzanine level is almost the identical experience of being, in the vessel. I also think it's a failure because it's like, again, from a first-person experience, it's a failure. But also, when we were there, I got this like distinct impression that by being a person who paid money to go on this thing as I'm walking around it, that I'm the butt of the joke, right? That everyone else in the city, and the ground level, or in the mall across the way, is looking at me walking around like an idiot in the sculpture, being like, "What a dumbass." Paid $8 to go walk around a bunch of stairs in the baking hot sun on dark gray, flooring for the stairs and the circulation, not sidewalks, whatever pathways. What an idiot! Well, look at those idiots doing that thing, because again, you don't get different experiences by going all the way around it. So
No, and I was gonna say there is maybe like a couple cool minutes if you stand at the very bottom in the center of it and look up. Okay, yeah, sure, that's a unique view. And then when you're at the very top looking down, it looks like an Escher drawing.
That's really cool.
In person, and kind of like a sci-fi movie. But I don't think I need to walk it, to get the experience. And the fact that they had issues with suicide the last, few years, they had to put a bunch of nets and actually close off, I don't know,
portions.
Two-thirds of the vessel completely changed the experience you can have, because you cannot walk around it anymore. And it's kind of like, well, then what is this building about?
There have been architectural projects and writings and things that talk about the importance of circulation spaces. So there's a building done by Schumi at I think it was Columbia University. It's a Columbia University building, yes. And I forget what it is, a student hall or whatever. There's a big glass facade, and he had designed a series of, it's like a 5-story structure, 6-story structure. And he put the staircase that goes back and forth. So students traverse from first level to sixth level across this big circulation zigzag kind of thing that's on the face of the facade. I mean, it's inside, but it's at the facade. And I think he has some spots that are wider, some spots that are flat, obviously for wheelchairs. I think maybe there's some seating there as well, if I'm not mistaken. And the whole point was that the circulation, these pathways are critical areas for discourse, meeting, bumping into people, having casual conversations. The sidewalk in the city, as we spoke about in the other recording, like those spaces carry a lot of value, even though there's no program. Right. Now, however, when you just have circulation for circulation's sake, and there's no program, and no program in the form of experience either, like on a hike, right? You could argue the trees and the mountains and the rocks and the waterfalls are program. When you don't have that, it becomes a hamster wheel. And then it fails, and then it becomes tiring, especially in New York summers, come on. And that's when the people that are experiencing feel like, oh, I've just been made fun of. Like this was a joke that I fell for the trap of the joke. So the other thing I'll say with the vessel is from a sculptural design standpoint, I have no problem with the general form of it. I think it's very interesting. It's an Escher-esque thing. Mm-hmm. It falls short. That does not justify all the problems and counteract the problems we've highlighted. But from a design aesthetic material standpoint, when you're in it, again, they specified, I don't know if it was a terrazzo or whatever, some kind of
like asphalt to me. I don't think it was asphalt, but it just felt like road material.
Dark gray material cover for the ground of all the circulation of the stairs, which I didn't find to be very pleasing. I also found it to be a very weird pairing with the polished copper.
Well,
it's like it didn't make sense at all.
You're losing the beauty of the building once you're inside of it. Like none of that
you're correct.
sensibility is present. Again, well, he did the same thing with that park. It's doing the same thing. It looks great from afar. Just don't go in it.
Maybe
that's the concept.
No. But no, you're right. There's an elegance and almost a lightness, to it from a distance, from the copper from the outside. There's a laciness, and with that selection of the materials that I've described, the dark gray, it just feels heavy, and it loses its magical, kind of ephemeral qualities.
He should have made this the park.
What do you mean?
Well, we'll post pictures of it, but like when you look down, you kind of see like the gaps between the basket weaves, where the flat platforms are. He could have made that like green terraces, and that could have been a beautiful park to be in.
I know.
Oh, man.
The other thing, do they use that same kind of asphalt, whatever material for the hand railings? So
hot.
It just it didn't make sense.
It's weird.
It didn't make sense. I'm like, dude, what are we doing here? This is sad. So, that's all I have to say with the vessel specifically. Another observation and feeling I had very strongly visiting Hudson Yards, and Hudson Yards, by many metrics, is very successful. Pretty cool outdoor spaces. The High Line intersects, goes underneath some of the buildings. They have really cool kind of pocket spaces, different types of seating, vantage points of the city because you're above the city. When you're underneath that tower or just past the tower, we have all this stuff there. And also the buildings themselves are also phenomenal for the most part. You might disagree with some of the forms. Maybe you don't like Hadid. Maybe you don't like KPF. Maybe you don't like DSR. But you can't deny for what these things are, they are phenomenal and they're well done. They spared no expense to make these things great. So here we have a big, massive plan, billions and billions and billions of dollars spent in this area. All these architecture firms got exactly what they wanted for the most part, right? Massive budget to do a cool building in your style. Interact with the High Line, iconic street level raised, public level space. Everything you could possibly want as an architecture group of architects, you have it. And it's great, but I'm also like, well, was it worth it though? Was the, $5 billion, I don't know how many billions, I'll make up a number, $3 billion worth of money spent? Was it worth it? Could we have spent that money creating more productive, more culturally significant, socially, rewarding spaces with that money? And probably in a bunch of other places throughout the city with that same amount of cash. Is there and this was kind of a revelation, because as an architect you're always hunting for the project where you can do something really cool. And yes, there's public spaces, cultural, but architects also love form and glass and steel and twisting stuff and whatever bubble structures and polish. Like, we love that stuff too. That's what we're always like secretly wanting to a degree. And I visited there. I'm like, well, it's here.
No, I know. I think that's kind of that was somewhat my feeling throughout the trip. Was like I was reminded and amazed as how much money is and time is spent into building the buildings in New York, but also in the bigger picture, or looking at those buildings like outside of just New York. Like, what does this mean?
Sure.
And the value of that, except for the very few that could experience it, like, is that. And I mean, the Highland is kind of weird too, because you still have crappy buildings with an AC unit hanging from windows and people living with that. And on the other side, you have Zaha Hadid, like scoopy, curvy, like whatever, with like penthouses and like, again, a place
Strange.
where the world collide. And that's it. Like,
Yeah.
Like, we're not really. We're just putting the two ends of the spectrum next to each other, but we're not really learning on how to like create a better middle ground. So I don't know.
Yeah, and that's not, and that this question, how does it get answered or solved? It really has to do with much bigger things of policies, private money versus public money, and I get that, but it just felt like all the architects were given an unlimited credit card to spend at a candy store. You know what I mean? You could have all the candy you want, whatever combination of candy you want. You want all, there's sour rolls, which I love. You can have all of it, right? And all the different colors. Throw in some Skittles, throw in some tiny, throw it, whatever you want. And that's what the Hudson Yards is. And yet, as an architect, I felt like I was a bit let down, because I'm like, yeah, but so what, dude?
But I feel
what?
But I feel like that's because you're still missing the soul. Like, the soul is not there. The soul of the place is not there.
Like, do I feel like this place is as rewarding, productive, blah, 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 compared to just a classic standard public park with spaces for kiosks for people to sell like their whatever things and people to play chess and have a fountain and do art stuff? Yeah, they're different, but like resources. Is this a more of an expression of our current downfall as a society and our inequitable situation we're in? Is it more that than it is actually something to be proud of?
Yeah.
Then I think that's the question. I don't have the answer to that, but I think that is the question. Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching this video on YouTube. If you like what we're doing, then please support our show by hitting that subscribe button.
You can also find us on most of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're mostly on Instagram. And you can reach out to the hotline, 213-222-6950. You can send a text message or leave a voicemail if you have any reaction to this recording, any questions you might have, or guest suggestion. Feel free to send it our way.
Cool. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.